What's up, everybody? Welcome to a very special episode of Let Me Get That Potograph Live. Got a panel discussion today on grading in the hobby. And got a couple of people joining us today. First off, man who did many Beckett submissions in the past. We've got Mark. Then we've got John Newman from the Sports Card Nation podcast joining us. And from Wax Pack Nation, we've got Jared Landris. And we've got from SGCville, one of the biggest SGC suburbs out there, we've got Kat. So, guys, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, man. Well, I wanted to have all you guys on because all of you, obviously, I know.
Can everybody hear everybody?
Yeah, I can. Can you?
I can hear everybody.
Good deal. All right. Well, I wanted to have all you.
Going to be before Drew and Jared get on.
So cats may not be able to hear some people, which is a little odd.
You guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you hear us? Can you hear us? I guess not. No. All right. Well, that starts out wonderful. All right. Well, we'll let Katz figure out if he can hear us or not. But I wanted to have you guys on because, Jared, I know you deal a lot with PSA, Mark a lot with BGS, and as I said, Katz a lot with SGC. And, John, you deal with all three of the companies and follow it quite a bit, obviously, being running a podcast. And so I really wanted to talk about grading in general because there's been a lot of misinformation and a lot of stuff out there going on lately that I find a little different. And throughout this whole COVID process, a lot, you've had SGC start to pump up the publicity, really start to get out there a lot more. But you're also seeing a lot of pushback from a lot of people on that. And so when you guys, we'll get Katz back in here in just a minute when he figures his audio all out. But when you guys look at the current grading landscape, because really grading, I mean, you could argue that when the hobby was, dying down after the junk era and when it was in its down period, you could argue grading's really what kind of saved the hobby in a way. The popularizing of grading really gave the card industry that life it needed when there were down draft classes, when it was, people still were on the fence about the junk era. And even from when I got back into the hobby about 5 or 6 years ago till now, the recent explosion from then to now has been just insane. So when you guys look at the actual landscape of today's hobby and grading in the hobby, what are your thoughts on it?
I would go first.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go first. Why not? Yeah. So I'd agree that grading definitely has changed the landscape, but I would say that it's really not the hobby side of the industry that it's changed so much, but more of the investor dealer side. I think that the hobby side, there's still a large percentage of people that have never submitted a card for grading before. And, like myself personally, my most favorite part of my collection is my unopened wax. Mm-hmm. And I have zero interest in cracking any of that to ever get graded. But yeah, I mean, overall, just from a keeping things interesting, I think that grading has really, it's changed the game immensely. And, now also, you had mentioned the junk wax or the junk era time. That junk era is coming back so fast and so hot right now that, those that sat on the product for the last, 30 years they're making a killing because the market is super hot right now.
Absolutely. John?
Yeah, I mean, it is a game changer. And I might be the old man on the porch here. I remember when Beckett grading first came out, and I had my store, and someone came in with a card graded by Beckett, and he showed me, and I was like, "Why is it in this?" I had no idea. And I'm like, "Well, what?" He goes, "Well, I sent it away. They look at it with a fine tooth comb." and then they give it an assessment. And I'm like,
Was your
what did
first
that cost? And he's like, $15. I'm like, you could have brought it here. I would have told you what grade it was for $5. It wouldn't have got the slab treatment. But so I was sort of anti-grading when it first kind of hit the scene. And here we are, you know, that was what, 90 something. And here we are 20 something years later. And I'm on a show talking about grading, and I've submitted. I had to do an estimate because it's hard to track. Probably 3,600 cards in total to all three of the big three, and it's a huge part of the hobby now. I don't care if you like it or you don't like it. It's here to stay. Obviously, it's no breaking news. And you know, when you watch people open packs, whether it's a breaker on YouTube or on a live feed, or just a person in a store, you know, it's right there. They say, oh man, look at that, centering sharp. They're talking about grading as they're opening packs, looking at hits. And so, oh, that one's not going to grade, you know, the centering's off, can't send that. So it's in everything, almost every corner of the hobby in some form or facet. And whether you like it or not, doesn't really matter anymore. And so, you know, someone may not send their cards in to be graded. They may not be for it, but it's a huge part of the hobby. It's a huge part of the income and the money exchanging hands. And it always will be at this point.
Absolutely. And, you know, Mark, you in particular, I know, I mean, grading in the last year, 2 years has really taken off, but you were running a group almost before everything really like exploded and took off. What have you seen, you know, as you look at it in the last couple of years, you know, at least on your side, you dealt a lot, I know, with Beckett. What did, you know, when did you see this start to take off? When did you see that shift?
I would say probably early 2019, late 2018, early 2019, I really took off. You know, nowadays the common thing is if it's not graded, then it didn't grade well. You know, everybody says that. So it really changed how we look at cards, honestly. And you know, almost nobody will buy a raw card anymore. Just because of the dick truck, because grading is so prevalent now because we have all these bulk submitters. We have 2-3 companies now that are taking cards and are deemed reputable. So the mindset has gone from, oh wow, you spent this money to have somebody tell you what this card is, to, oh, you need to have your card graded if you want to have any chance of selling them. And you know, we've also had all of these people come in that weren't part of our hobby, so to speak, and tell you what an amazing investment these are. And what do you do with investments? You protect them. And slabbing and grading them is the best way to do that right now.
Yeah, no, I'll agree with you there. And you mentioned something that is definitely becoming more and more prevalent, and that is outside people, like you said, people that you might not necessarily associate with the hobby that are getting into discussing graded cards, and in particular, what cards to go after. They're always talking about buying, you know, the graded aspect of it. People that, you know, may have been collectors for a long time, but you don't know. And then I know some for a fact don't collect. They're just doing it because they're capitalizing on the popularity. They have a YouTube channel and a following, and so that's what they're going to do. But when you guys see these people coming in and doing this, these so-called influencers, if you will, I don't know. To me, it runs the risk of just being a little dangerous with the aspect of people. I mean, pumping up stuff that shouldn't be pumped up to say. And I think there's a lot of people that go into it with maybe not quite as much education on the grading system as maybe they need to be. And I don't know. I find that dangerous to the average person and the new person in the hobby that may be searching YouTube videos to see, you know, what they should be buying.
I think what a lot of the pumpers are trying to do right now is they're trying to changed the landscape of the supply and demand. So
Yeah.
you have an item that, yeah, there might be, literally 500,000 Ken Griffey Jr. 89 Donruss rookies out there, but there's only a finite amount of them in PSA 10. And if they can purchase enough of them to kind of corner the market a little bit and reduce the inventory, it immediately starts spiking up the cost because people feel like their chances of getting one is reducing. And you can almost do that with any card, but especially some of the powerhouse rookies over the last 20, 30 years that have been really cheap, they're all exploding because of that. Because, someone that is some money, it's nothing to them to go spend $20,000-$30,000 on one player, one card, and just try to empty the market of it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that. And I want to kind of jump on that for a minute because that's something I wanted to talk about that. And that's the manipulation in the grading market. Because when you look at the sales and you look at everything, it's so, you always hear the phrasing, well, let's go by eBay comps. Well, like maybe 2 years ago, it might have been that easy. But nowadays there's so, you really have to start weighing these comps, seeing which ones you can take a look at, which ones are real, which ones aren't. But there's so much, and it goes well beyond just on eBay. You see it in rooms, you see it just about everywhere. We're talking about these cards being, graded cards being the crux of the hobby, the cards that everyone wants and the cards that really are going to move everything. But I look at these cards and I see so much manipulation in these markets. I think that, is this something that we can actually curb? Is this something that we could actually stop? Or is it, or is this one of those just unregulated industries that's gone so far off the edge, there's no turning back.
Yeah, it's unregulated, as you know, Drew. And I'm going to take a sort of an odd stance, or at least to most, not to me because it's my stance, but and in this era of content creation and anyone can turn their camera on and their phone on and make a 1 minute TikTok video or a 2 hour YouTube live stream, whatever you choose. Anyone can say what they want as long as they're not really breaking any laws. I think the problem is not so much what someone is saying. It's the people who just do stuff blindly when they hear what these people are saying. And so I don't know, I'm not trying to give the pumpers, as we've called them today, or the influencers, or however you want to coin them, if we want to bash them. And I'm not saying they're completely innocent, but at the end of the day, it's those that hear what they're saying and sort of like sheep, just kind of buy it and don't do their own research and make their own decisions. It's always nice to get other people's opinions. I do that myself and always will. But at the end of the day, whatever I decide to do, whether it's to buy this or sell that, it's going to be my own rationale that pulls that trigger or not. And, I may hear somebody and someone else might say, do this, John, or think about this, John. But at the end of the day, I have to do what I think is the best thing. And I guess what scares me is how many people just take what some of these folks are saying and run with it without questioning it or without putting their own rationale. And I think that's the scary part. You're never going to stop people from telling people buy this or sell this or this is your best bet. That's never going to go away. What I'm hoping for is people just kind of see through the smoke and mirrors and ultimately come to their own conclusion. If they want to take that advice as part of that conclusion, it's a free country, but just don't blindly accept anything someone hands out to you as fact.
So when you look at some of the influencers out there, the thing with the hobby industry is that it's not really blindly following. Like, unlike, like you have the stock market and someone says, oh, this penny stock is going to go through the roof. And so everybody goes and buys it and it goes up, 200% overnight. And then those people didn't sell it immediately. So the next day it went down even further than it started at. The hobby market doesn't really have that ability. So what's happening right now is that, like, I've taken some items that I've told people, hey, this is going to be a really hot item. 3 weeks ago, I said, I looked at the market and I said, look, everything's skyrocketing right here. Tony Gwynn rookies are $110. Okay. So I posted it on my Facebook page and told everybody, if you want a decent investment, you probably should look at this. So within a matter of an hour, there was not one Tony Gwynn, Donruss, Fleer, or Topps PSA 10 on all of eBay available anymore. And in the last 3 weeks, every single version has more than doubled in price. And it's not because I was trying to manipulate the market, but because now there really is nothing out there for other people to buy. There is a limit for how many are available. There's like 700 Donruss PSA 10s. I own 40 of them, so at some point people get shut out of the market if they don't jump in early. And I think that's somewhat of what people are worrying about. I don't understand the 1989 Upper Deck Griffey rookie craze right now. I don't even understand the 2011 Topps Update Mike Trout craze. And I'm a diehard Trout fan. I have a very large registry on PSA. I'm in the top 20, but I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. There's no scarcity to the card when there's 5,000 of them out there. But when you're looking at like a 1983 Topps Gwynn and there's 650 of them out there, and the odds of another one getting pulled from a pack that's centered, that's sharp at this time, it is like nothing. There's not even a box on eBay to take one out of. So it's a double-edged sword. The influencers are definitely pumping things up, but I don't necessarily know that the people following them are doing it blindly either, because really anything those influencers say is going to go up. When you look at Gary V's, they know what they're doing.
Here's the thing, Jared. It has to go up with a transaction. Them saying it doesn't make someone just buy your money, exchange hands on its own. Someone has to hear that and do it. So it's like the gun. A gun kills people. No, it's actually the person with the gun. Okay, so I'm not trying to give them a total free pass, but I listen to people all the time that say, buy this. And by the way, Tony Gwynn, that piece of advice I agree with. So
100%.
But there's other times someone will say, hey, buy the whole day of rebate 90 Fleer card. I'm not doing it, right? I know better than that, and I know that's a goofy example and not real, but for whatever player, player A, this is a great investment. Buy them all up at this price level. They're going to go up next week, double that. If someone takes that, hears that, and does it, it's really on them.
Oh, 100%.
It is, but eBay is still a huge piece of this puzzle.
Yes.
And when you look at eBay, if there's 100 of an item on eBay, they're not all at the same price. So if someone says go buy something, they might see a price that starts at $20, and then the most expensive of that item might be $70. So if you tell enough people to go buy it, the first person buys it at $20. The next person sees, oh wow, all the $20 ones are gone. Now they're $23. And it just starts ballooning from there. So they're just trying to get in on the ground floor because they know that other people are going to follow. And if other people follow, it's going to balloon. The question mark is at what point do all of these people that bought this item that they didn't care about at all start dumping it?
Exactly. And that's where you took the question right from my mouth that I was about to ask. And what you basically said, is people are following, they keep going and going, but how long does this last? And do you see this as something that, at least in the graded area, do you see something that curves, or do you think as long as the hobby's strong, you think this is just going to continue to keep going up? Because like you said, the trout, perfect example. You're a massive trout collector. I know you never last year, let's say when we were looking at the national, looking at trout rookies, I know if we'd both talked about what they'd be worth now, we wouldn't have thought they'd be where they're at. And
I
they
sold
just
my BPS 9.5, a true 9.5 with a 10 for $15,000 last year at the national. My red.
that's just incredible.
I can guarantee you it's more than 15,000 today.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, I think that, part of this is, obviously, you have a lot of influencers coming in and realizing that they can make a quick buck, because it really is in some ways a quick buck for them. Yeah. And then when you start, tacking on the fact that people are kind of starting to think that the stock market was going to eventually crash and the housing market was going to start dropping, and they were already kind of going down that road because investors are always one step ahead of the typical consumer. And then you throw COVID into it, and then you throw our federal government into it, where they're throwing $1,200 checks if people don't need them. I can't tell you how many people on Facebook were just like, "Hey, I got my check. What's for sale?"
Yep.
They're not spending it on paying their bills. They're buying more cards.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And so, Mark, I know you yourself, you've been following this for a while. Jared's cooking his dinner, so we're gonna let him check on his chicken in a minute. But John, Mark, what how long do you guys see this lasting for? Do you think this is something that people are eventually going to catch on and say, well, hold on, maybe this is getting a little out of hand? Because people in the hobby, they're smart. They are. We're talking like everyone in here just blindly follows it. It's not like that. It's a segment that we're talking about there when we discuss that. But is there a point where we look at this and say, okay, we need to slow down a little bit? Or because, when you take a look at grading in general, there are some questionable issues with, that are going on right now. And I mean, John, you can start off here if you want. We've got federal investigations. A year ago at this time, we're looking at new massive cards that were slabbed and trimmed every single day being released. And, it kind of died down post-national. The news stopped coming out every single day. But this stuff is still going on. And yet we're talking, I keep going back to, we're talking about these cards as like the be-all, end-all in the hobby. Is there a point where this slows down? Because there are, quite a bit of questionable, and concerns with a few of these companies.
Yeah. So everybody, it seems nowadays, has a healthy skepticism. So I think that's where we're going, and this hobby is certainly starting to pick up on pattern. And there's going to come a time when something will happen. It'll be so massive that there's just no getting past it. With the market as it is, I think Panini and Top to take a look at how things are going now. They're seeing Top flagship is going up, Bowman going up, Panini Prism going up. They should take a look at that and see that we don't need all these other products. I know the unions require a certain amount of product, but
well, they're taking a look because blaster prices have risen on certain products. Yeah. They've started jacking blaster boxes, which were always $19.99. Now certain products, they're $22 or $23. I guarantee you Prism next year is $30.
Mosaic.
Yeah. Prism basketball will be $30 a blaster probably next year. So they are paying attention to that stuff. I mean, they 100% are. But let's switch gears a little bit now, and I kind of do want to focus on, we talked about, we've mentioned the big three companies, obviously. You got PSA, BGS, SGC now. It used to be the argument was always Topps versus Panini, but I think in the last couple of months, I've heard more grading arguments and company arguments and discussions that I've ever heard in my life. I have my own theories on what it is, but I want to ask you guys, what do you think makes people so divisive on these different grading companies?
personal experience on their first try.
Yeah.
If they didn't get that 10 or that BGS, black label on their first try, they're just, they're like, what happened? It was perfect. And, they really got 6.
Yeah.
I think people make their decision based on what they're hearing a lot of times from other hobbyists. And I think the slab itself, people have said, I know PSA it's got a big black cloud above it and there's some shady stuff going on, but I love their slabs, so sometimes it's as simple, it depends on the individual. Sometimes it's as simple as I like their slabs better than the other two. I'm willing to, who cares about the trimming scandal? I didn't trim my cards. I'll let them worry about those cards. And so sometimes it's we're creatures of habit. We're impulse buyers. Sometimes it just is something as simple as that. Or my buddy submits 100 cards a month, and I like them too.
Did you guys really care about the trimming scandal? I'll be honest. I mean, I'm PSA all the way. I have moments where I'm like, maybe I'll try out SGC. I have some SGC cards. I actually started with SGC well before PSA. SGC happens to be 20 minutes from my house. That's kind of nice. But I never cared about the trimming scandal because to me, the entire grading industry is still human. And since you can't get rid of the human error yet until you basically get rid of the humans of it and move it to everything being computerized, I don't really know what they could have done. They're going to have more trimmed cards than everybody else because they're grading more cards than everybody else.
I'd agree with you, Jared, if it was just human eye error. I think it's bigger than that. I think it's
Exactly.
knowingly. I think it's knowingly happened. If it's me grading a card and I miss a bad corner and give it a 10 by accident, that's human error. I may, like, umpires make a bad call in a baseball game, right? We're talking. One's in the news now because it cost a guy a perfect game. Andre Galarraga. That's human error. But when, hey, wink, wink, here's my stuff, pass it through, and it's not up to par, that's not human error. That's shady business practices. And
I would agree. I just don't know that they've been able to prove that that's happened. Right. And I do think, I mean, as the investigations go further, because, I mean, the FBI did get involved. Everything's been pretty hush-hush. Eventually, it's going to come out. And you may absolutely have a bad seed within the organization of PSA or BGS, because, I mean, BGS had the black label scandal as well.
Yeah.
So you may have a bad seed that found loopholes or ways to get around things, whether it be now or in previous years. But they're a publicly traded company. And I mean, I can't imagine this is at the topmost level of the organization, because it would shut them down. I mean, the SEC would literally shut them down.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting because there is, like you said, there's been an investigation. And normally when it gets this hush-hush, that's normally about when stuff starts to come out. So hopefully, eventually we do get to hear it. But John, I can tell, I know you very well. There's something on your mind. So jump on in. I can see it.
Well, nothing's come out. Me and you've talked about this. Nothing's come out since the national, but 56 people got subpoenaed. Think about that. 56. If there's nothing going on, and with everything going on in the world, you think FBI agents want to give 56 subpoenas out to hobby folks when they got racketeering and cocaine and murder for hire? I'm a believer where there's smoke, there's fire.
How big do you think the industry is right now? You think it's 10 billion a year? Is it 50 billion a year?
I don't know. It's going up. I know that much. Whatever the number is.
The FBI is going to follow money for,
I agree with you. I agree with you. But at the same time, Jared, I'm they're not going to do that for semantics or for show.
Oh, great. I mean, there's people that
they can do that on Wall Street. They could do that on Wall Street and make more news if it was for them puffing their chest out and we're the big bad feds and we're on to you. So the fact that they were at the National, and I don't know for sure, 56 is what rumored subpoenas. Maybe it's 45. Maybe it's 62. I don't know. It's still a high number any way you slice it. And listen, full disclosure, I just got back an order from PSA. So maybe I'm part of the problems as well. But, when you look at the three companies that we're going to talk about here, even BGS with the Black Label and Joe Clemens, SGC, regardless of where you fall on them and ranking them on the podium, gold, silver, or bronze here, they're out of the three companies. They're the ones that don't have the black eyes and the dark clouds above them. Now, you may not like them, and that's the beauty of America. It's freedom of choice.
I don't think that they don't have that black eye because they weren't large enough to ever get a black eye.
Yeah.
No one cared about them enough.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and these scandals are definitely concerning because I'm not to the level where Garrett has submitted to PSA, but at Beckett, I gave him a lot of business, and from even sub to sub, 30-day to 5-day, there's so many differences. It's very clear that they submit things at the last minute, so that margin for human error is much higher because they're rushing. And, we have too much product at the grader. Sometimes I'll be like, why did you grade this card? Even on eBay, I'm like, why did you grade this card? Why are you selling it? It's not marketable. But, with the trimming thing, it affects everybody because their cards may be worth less in the long run because these scandals have a black eye. Like you said, Garrett, we don't know how high it goes. But with Beckett, I think, if people, when I was grading and even to this day, they'll be like, how much did it cost to get a 10? I'm like, okay. Like, they did the, how people, yeah. So, or like somebody would be like, hey, put a 20 in the card saver that you send in the back of my card, it's definitely become a scandal for sure.
Well, Jared asked, do you care? And then John, you mentioned that you just got a sub back, and are you quote unquote part of the problem? I think those are two very different things. I kind of wanted to touch on those because,
I don't mean to cut you off, Drew. I just want, it's something Jared said. And again, Jared, this isn't against you, but I'm going to use your argument again. You said, well, SGC doesn't grade as many cards, so they're not going to do that.
Yep.
That's all the more reason that you made my point before. They need to do better business. What they should be schmoozing people. Hey, pay us an extra $100. They're all 10s, and you don't hear that about them. So that's a check mark plus for SGC. Thank you, Jared.
It doesn't mean I couldn't concur with SGC. I know that I've seen some.
No, I know. I know. I'm not yelling at you or even yelling, but
Yeah, I get it. I mean, look, and I just want to clarify. I absolutely care that people are trimming cards. I think that any kind of modification is disgusting. I'm just saying it doesn't affect me directly. I'm not looking at those high-end cards.
Right.
I'm not in the business of trimming cards. I'm not in the business of buying trimmed cards. So they're going to correct it. It needed to come out. I don't think that it was as surprising to a lot of people, but I still think that it, hopefully it is just literally a case of people pushing too many cards through, too overworked, and it's not, that people are complicit. Odds are someone's going to be complicit somewhere along the line. I can't imagine they won't be with the FBI involved, but my hope is that will not actually happen. That it will just be that, look, there's too many items one person to look at. If you figure out how many graders that they have and how many items that they're grading on a yearly basis, they only have 20 seconds, 30 seconds to look at a card. 15 seconds to look at a card. I mean, who knows what the number is? It's really low.
Yeah,
it's definitely less than a minute.
Oh yeah.
And you're not going to find everything.
No, you're not. And
one quick question, and
Yeah.
I won't be annoying about it for Jared. If came out tomorrow, just hypothetical situation, Joe Orlando, I don't know if he's in the building with COVID-19, but let's say he is. The feds take Joe Orlando out in cuffs, and they charge him with 3 or 4 different crimes, including maybe fraud or whatever else they deem him potentially guilty of. Would that, being a PSA guy, and I send the PSA too, so you could ask me to say in reverse, but would that change your opinion or assessment of PSA?
Yeah, and it would also change everybody else's too. So
Yeah.
it would floor the company. I'm pretty optimistic that that's not going to occur. But yeah, absolutely. I'm okay with the knowledge that look, a card that is more popular is going to be scrutinized more. So it's tougher to get a 10 on certain cards than something else, because you want them to, if it's more valuable, you want them to spend more time on it. Right. But at the point that if they're just brushing things aside, if there's that buddy system, if there's, they submit a lot of cards, or it's a friend, or it's employee. No, I mean, that doesn't fly.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Jared. I mean, you nailed it. I think that would change everyone's opinion on it. But there's actually, something I want to jump on from someone in the comments, Paul. I don't want to mention anyone's names, but there are certain people that in the hobby now that make quite a good living off of prepping cards, restoring some of these cards, a lot of the new cards, and it's some of them really teeter that line about, we're talking about right now an entire scandal based off of trimming, where I mean, these cards it wasn't that they were just using a regular trimmer and just cutting an edge up. They were pressing these cards down, getting that extra eighth, and then chopping it off. I mean, it was a detailed process they were doing. But you've got other people that, I don't know, are really, you could argue, I mean, I've seen the cards come in, they're scratched, they're scuffed up. I've seen the cards come out, they look like a brand new card. At what point, do we deem it acceptable? I mean, where is that line? And I mean, are we just going to let the grading companies determine that for us? Or, because it is an unregulated industry.
It's
we determined it, honestly, Drew, because we pay a premium for PSA 10, BGS 9.5. We won't pay anything for less than that. So in my mind, we are responsible for those people who are making a good living off of that. I don't fault them. I don't think it's right. But at the same time, we're paying raw for a PSA 10 or BGS 9. And I absolutely have problems with that, because, people spend that stuff on grading, and you don't get any return on investment, because nobody will pay more for a 9 or less. And I think because it's authenticated, you have a grade, it's in a slab, we could pay more for raw. That's my opinion. I think we created this cleaning, waxing epidemic, if you want to call it that.
To me, Drew, the answer is this. The only thing you really should do to a card, and this is really specifically more your chrome cards, is wipe the surface, take your fingerprints off. That's it. If you're using the stuff you use on your cards, your car, not your cards, your car that you drive, to buff out scratches, from the shopping cart at Walmart when you cleared the rack of optic. But if you're using like wax buffers to fill in surface, scratches and that, you're altering the card at that point. Obviously, it goes without saying, if you're cutting it, any kind of coloring, you're taking a marker or some sort of color product and
I've seen that too.
taking a loss of color and refinishing in it. That might work in the art world. It's not accepted in the card world. So
Yeah, and that's a big argument that people say, well, why isn't that okay? It's at the point that it leaves the pack, however it was in that pack, in that factory set, in whatever means that it came out from the manufacturer, that's it. You win some, you lose some. I would love for companies to charge less because you didn't get a 10. It's not reality. Any alteration to it outside of, if you put in your own fingerprint on it, you should be able to wipe that off. I think that's pretty simple.
Yeah.
We all, eyeglass, cloth or whatever, but at the point that you are adding anything to the card or removing anything from the card, it's wrong.
No, I completely agree with you. And I've talked to a couple of people at the different grading companies about that, and they're trying to figure out a way to determine how they can tell what stuff's been put on that stuff. So because I know they don't like it either. I know that they have an actual problem with it as well. But I know a lot of people, use grading as nothing but complete business, and they want those cards cleaned up to get those 10s to pump them right out the door. Because like you said, Mark, you get those 9s or those 8.5s, they're pretry much. Well, for a while there, they were worthless. Now you could say 9s.
Nines the last few weeks aren't so bad anymore.
No, and they're definitely not.
The three big companies need to work together.
Mm-hmm.
They actually need to talk to each other.
Yep.
They need a joint loss prevention department. They need joint staff to be scouring eBay, scouring the online boards, being in all the Facebook groups, being in the Instagram groups, being in the Twitter groups, and weeding out these people. I mean, you can go onto Facebook today and see post after post where people are asking, hey, how much do you charge to modify my card?
Exactly.
Okay. And as someone that, I started submitting cards for myself and then said, well, if I'm going to submit it for myself, I might as well submit for other people. If I'm in like every Facebook group. If I go into a Facebook group and see someone ask that question, I immediately put them on a list in my computer and know I will never accept a card from them. Because at some point, PSA they're not going to go after that person that, happened to have gotten 5 cards clean. That they can't manage that. They're going to go after the people that are submitting the cards for them, even if those people didn't know it occurred, or if they had nothing to do with it but did know it occurred. So I'm just ridding myself of the potential future nightmare.
Yeah. And I think that's smart. I think I think a lot more people need to do that. And I mean, Jared, you said it best. You open that pack, the card comes out, you win some, you lose some. They're not all going to be that perfect 10 that everyone wants all the time. Some things, sometimes there is just, there's the card's not going to be perfect. But before we wrap everything up, guys, I want to touch on, kind of where we can go from here, because we've talked a lot about, there's a lot of issues that are going on with these different companies and a lot of issues going on with submitters, whether it be altering cards or with the grading companies themselves. What can we ultimately do to improve the grading process? Because I said it at the very beginning of the show. I firmly believe it's responsible for bringing back the hobby, and I think it's very responsible for how strong it is now. I think if you did not have the graded aspect of this hobby, there would not be near a boom that there is. I don't think it would have come back. I do think it was a very big deal. But I look at the grading. I just look at grading in general, and I see so much room for improvement. So where do you guys, and John, I'll start with you. What do you think needs to be done, to better the grading? Because watching SGC come up in the last couple months and the social media push that they've pushed lately has brought out so many posts of looking at cards and seeing 10s that should probably be 8s of any company. You pick a company, I can show you 10 posts about cards that, maybe aren't graded near properly, and, you chalk it up to human error. But what can we do really, and where should we go to, try to eliminate some of this? Is the only way we can do that to try and get some of this automated?
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not a huge fan of automation either. I'm not sure that's the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Computers break down too, or have glitches, or software programs fail that they run on. The power, and I've said this on my show, Drew, and I know, I think you have too. The power is in the people. These companies, especially with PSA, Jared pointed out, which I obviously knew, maybe some don't. They're a publicly traded company. They have shareholders that care. Hey, how do we do this quarter? What's my dividend going to be? Are we splitting? All those stock questions, if you're familiar with the market. And even when all the big hubbub was going on with PSA and the black clouds, if you will, that happened around the national time, as we talked about earlier. And if you were there, what did you see in front of PSA's booth? A line that stretched around twice.
Yeah.
So they're counting dollars. When does a company fear their business? When they look in their bank account and they notice a fall, a drop. And so as long as we keep sending the PSA and whoever else, I'm using PSA as an example here, as long as that line is that long, they may release a press statement here and there and put on a good front. But at the end of the day, it's us as consumers that say enough. And now that line is not going to be that long. If that was to occur, which I'm not even thinking it will, I'm just hypothetically, that's when some internal change would occur. So as long as submissions are rolling in, and they are for PSA, even though they're on a limited capacity, it's going to be business. To me, it's going to be business as usual. It's going to be us. I blame us more than almost PSA. I think it's going to be us that needs to send the message like we've had enough. If that message ever gets sent, which I'm not predicting it will.
Yeah. So I think we have to attack the problem from many different angles. I'm always somebody who looks for the cure and the problem and not treat the symptom. So part of the problem, is we have too many cars that are going to these places. We have too many people cracking and resubmitting, and that also leads to the backlog. And then, everybody wants everything cheaper, but here's what we have to do. We need to have some sort of system that prevents cracking and resubmitting. I know that's a very controversial topic, and the companies need to do better, because I've seen fingerprints that they weren't on the card, but I sent them the bucket, but it came back with the fingerprint. So they need to do better to prevent that kind of problem. And as I mentioned earlier, I think we send out too much product. So we also need to send a message to Panini and Top. And if we spend $2 or $3 more a card and get that guaranteed turnaround, and give each card its time of day, and rather than just boom, 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 let's just 50 to 10, that's a 9, that's an 8, 10, 9.5, 9. So I think there's multiple points we need to attack this.
Yeah, so a lot of people, obviously, especially in the Facebook groups and all that, they immediately say when it comes to Facebook or when it comes to PSA and BGS that, hey, you just need to hire more people.
Right.
Okay.
No.
One, it's, even not in the card industry, it's very hard to hire the right person.
Yep.
Now, in the hobby, we are expecting perfection 100% of the time. When they mislabel, when they overgrade, when they undergrade, when they take too much time, whatever it is, we expect perfection. Okay. The answer is not human capital. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay. If you raise the prices $2 or $3 because you assume that is going to decrease the number of cards mailed, it doesn't. It just raises the value of the item after it's graded. Okay. Mm-hmm. When you raise the value of the item after it's graded, it just brings a new influx of items. we do need to bring some technology into this picture. We need a faster way to receive product.
Yeah.
We need a better system for cataloging the items. I love PSA, but one of their biggest downfalls is that they don't understand the value of data well enough. So when you go and enter an item, there's no reason why 2020 Topps card for, let's say, a Chrome promo should look different in the way it's typed out than a 2019 version. It's the exact same thing, except a different year, but it's whoever typed it in first or what employee typed it in or whatever is how their data falls. They need to work with the vendors more. They need to work with Topps and Panini. That checklist data should be preloaded into their system.
Yeah.
People cannot be guessing of what they're typing in. So if the stuff is preloaded into their system, it will speed up the research. It will speed up the receiving. It will speed up the grading. It will speed up all of those different departments. I've been a huge proponent of the bulk subbers. I personally believe the solution to all of these companies, eventually SGC. Right now, SGC's biggest issue is that they're pushing themselves, saying that they're better, but they don't have staff to be better. So really, what's going to happen a month, 2 months from now, 6 months from now, they're going to say, "Oh wow, what did we do? We can't possibly handle this. We're just as behind as PSA is." So really, what they need to be doing is they need to invest in some technology, but they need to be looking and saying, we should not be taking on items anymore from the individual collector. They need to rely on the local card store and the large hobby influencers on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter to take in the sub, make sure that they are properly sleeved, make sure that it is properly documented, make sure that it is properly packaged, and submit them that way. If PSA takes in 1,000 packages in a day from 1,000 different people that all have 5 cards or 10 cards in it, that is significantly slower than if they take in 50 packages that have 1,000 cards in them. Okay, it's just a matter of ease and speed of things, and the only way that you can speed things up is to reduce the offering. So if it was me, I would get rid of the membership ideas. I would get rid of the ability for individuals to submit cards. Maybe allow them to submit cards still on the 2-day service where it's $200 a card, and they want it doesn't touch anybody's hands. That's fine. But the bulk submissions, the 45-day, the 85-day submissions, there should be no direct access to the companies. It would solve a lot of things by getting rid of that direct access.
No, it really, that's a very good, that's something I hadn't really thought of, but if they're not going to introduce a lot of technology, which both of you guys, everybody kind of touched on one thing that I really think needs to be changed, and that's the cataloging. There needs to be a much better system of tracking these cards. It can be done. You're starting to see that. I do like what SGC does with their high-res scans. They're creating that database now. It's nice to have that database created, but I hope it's used. I hope when we see stuff come in, if you've got a card, it's numbered 5 out of 10, you've got a high-res scan in your database of it. Well, that's awesome. But if that 5 out of 10 comes back to your system, are you able to pick it up? That's what we need to be, I think, is something that really needs to be worked on. And I think the catalog method that all these companies have needs a major overhaul. And that's one thing that, if we're not going to change to a straight up full on, technologically full on, put a card in a machine and it pops out a grade with everything mapped out. If we're not going to do something like that, I do think cataloging is probably one of the things we can at least improve on the most. That'll maybe cut some of this human error and some of these issues down. But what's up, John?
I was just going to say, the other thing I like to see him do is, you pay whatever price level you submit your cards on turnaround time. You pay for that turnaround time.
Right.
And I like to see them do something where, hey, if we don't get your cards back in 20 days or 45 days, it's not good. We'll refund you, not the whole thing. We don't want someone to work for free. That's not how you stay in business. But we charge you 10. We're going to give you, for each card we're late on, we're going to give you $2 or $3 credit on your next submission. There's got to be some onus on these companies to honor their turnaround service. You know, I don't want to compare them to pizza, but some of these pizza companies, if it's late, they give it to you free, or your next one's free. I'm not asking for free grading cards, but some sort of onus on them for not honoring the service level that you paid for.
Right.
It might improve some things potentially when there's some revenue to be lost by not being that way.
You can't fix the human time frame, because then you create that, oh well, we have to hit this number, so we're going to speed it through faster. We're going to do we're going to be an inferior job. And if you look at the pizza companies, even the pizza companies, Domino's, they used to offer free if we didn't deliver in 30 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever. They stopped doing that because their drivers would get in car accidents trying to meet that, because it was checks.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
at least no one's going to crash. No one's going to crash their car inside a. But I hear you. No, and they are good points. I'd like to see then get rid of the price levels. Just say, listen, other than like a 2-day or a 5-day, like some extreme where you're going to pay for this, because we're like the fast pass at Disney World. Everything else is $10, and you may get it 2 months from now. You may get it 5 months from now. You may get it 7 months from now. You pay $10. I'm sorry. It is what it is. If you want it in 2 days, it's $100, please.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably, that would be a good solution.
Yeah. I mean, look, Beckett used to do it, and part of why my opinion as before was what it was is because Beckett no longer offers that guarantee, and they used to. So that's what I'm saying. I know Gary said that human capital is not always the answer, but, like I said, reducing the amount of cards going to these companies, like I hate to say it, but cracking and resubbing was such a huge problem. When I was subbing, and I had one guy, I didn't realize it, but I started cataloging their cards, and they would keep resubbing the same card until they got a 9.5. It's just, that's gonna lead to more and more, because they think the more times they submit it, they'll finally get a break. We need to cut that out somehow, because that's gonna lead to trimming, that's gonna lead to the wax cleaning, that's gonna lead to all these questionable methods.
Yeah, and it's going to lead to Russell Wilson having so-called 50 contenders autos and having a pop report of 86 or whatever it is. So,
Jared made a great point earlier about these companies maybe communicating with each other.
Yes,
I think wishful thinking. It's a great point, but these companies, frankly, are trying to get everyone's cards. They're not going to help each other out here,
but they need to.
But they need
I
to.
agree.
I mentioned this to PSA recently, and their answer was, they don't believe it happens. They didn't know, but I get a lot of cards that are crossovers, BGS to PSA. Yeah. I'm sure that, plenty of people do PSA to BGS looking for that black label, whatever. And I just asked, a simple question. Hey, when PSA cracks that case, do they notify BGS to remove it from their system?
Right.
Yeah.
No.
But, I mean, for me, if I submit a card, I don't mind them putting some sort of invisible ink, something. I know I'm in the minority of that. A lot of people would die if you did that to their cards, but I think there needs to be a way that these companies, I've received this card, I've graded this card. Here's a stamp that proves that it's been graded before.
Serial number.
I can make a point that a company probably shouldn't crack someone else's case. Let the owner of the card do that. And I don't want to. If I'm PSA, I don't want a BGS case in my
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You-
Well, I do agree with Jared 100%. I think these companies do need to start working together at least a little bit. I know it's it's probably counterproductive to what they want, and it'll probably never happen. But I do think that that they do need to be working together. And Jared, like you said, if they're cracking something and putting it in another slab, especially if it's not serial numbered, that stuff needs to be notified. That stuff needs to be taken out of registries. That stuff needs to be cleaned up. Maybe when grading wasn't as big as it was, and it was just a small percentage of the hobby, maybe it wasn't that important. But as we've talked about today, it's a massive, massive business and a huge part of the hobby now, and that's where that's the reason that I want to take a look at this today. But guys, that's going to do it for our show. I would like to thank Mark, Jared, and Mr. Newman for joining me. Katz had some audio issues, so fortunately we couldn't have him on today. But guys, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It was fun.
Absolutely, and hope you guys at least maybe learned a little bit of something about grading, or maybe throw some ideas out there. Hopefully some of the grading companies were listening. But thanks so much for watching, everybody. And till next time, see you later.